Today we are talking about gut health, and as always, feel free to leave some questions on the chat. At the end of today's session, there'll be an opportunity to also switch on your video and your audio and ask questions, whichever method works best for you. Perfectly happy with either. So this is our third open office hour session, and I'm really happy to be able to do this, to share what we know at the Nutrition Clinic with a community. And it's wonderful to see some people come every week. This is obviously just our third. Next year, we're going to run these on a weekly basis. We have one more session for the year next week, and then we'll take a break before we restart in January. And as always, we're all ears. If you have any questions, any topics that you'd like us to cover, we're very interested to know from you what you'd like us to cover. The Nutrition Clinic has been in the field of nutrition for 12 years or so. I've been studying this and working in this space for 15 years or so. And we really do believe that at the core of what we do is share knowledge. There are different forms in which that knowledge is shared, and this is one of them. This is our way of connecting with a community, growing a community. So please do let your friends know about this. Let people know that this is just a time where it's your time to ask questions, to have some knowledge made available to you. What I tend to do is choose a topic, look for questions that come in. We've had a lot of questions around gut health. And so I have put some slides together to address those. I've also invited somebody who has worked with the Nutrition Clinic on her own gut healing journey, and she'll spend some time describing in her own words what worked for her, her own strategies. And then I will come to some of the questions that were asked, and I hope there's still some time for us to be able to answer questions that you have in addition to what's already been sent through. So let me get started. I'm going to start with some slides. That will take about 15 to 20 minutes, and then I will invite Sunita to come and talk about her journey, and then we'll leave some, and she'll talk for about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have some time to ask questions. And you can ask me questions, you can ask Sunita questions, because I'd like there to be a space for not just my voice, but the voice of people who are going through this to be shared as well. So if you give me a minute, I'll just share my screen. All right, so what do we do at the Nutrition Clinic? We help motivated women regain their energy, focus, gut and hormonal balance without extreme lifestyle changes, so that they can reclaim a vibrant life, even if they feel unheard or don't know what to do next. We do work with women and men, but we do find that when it comes to hormone work, obviously we see more women. When it comes to gut and energy work, we do see a mixed community. But one of the things that I think really sets us apart is the sense of unpacking what's going on in the body. Just what I really believe is that we all need to have a sense and understanding of what's happening in our body, and to not get perplexed or confused or scared when we have symptoms, but to really look at symptoms as an opportunity to understand what's happening in the body. Sorry, somebody's just admitting somebody in. If you give me a minute. Great. Okay, so when I'm trained as a biochemist, and then I became interested in personal health strategies because of a few things that I experienced. And when I went for training in functional medicine, I remember this one lecture that I attended where the presenter said, whatever you're dealt with, heal the gut. Heal the gut is like a mantra that we follow when it comes to functional medicine or body healing. And it's not just in functional medicine, it's in all complementary and even in mainstream medicine. There has been this belief that all disease begins in the gut and health rests in the gut. And there are many reasons for that. And there's much science that's coming up that really confirms that. And I'll talk about some of that in a bit. A little bit about my background. I am trained as I've got a degree in biochemistry and microbiology. I worked in the healthcare industry for about 15 years. on the business side of things before I became interested in personal empowerment. Sorry, I'm just gonna, if you could all just put yourself on mute, if you're not already on mute, that would be great. My personal health experiences led me to discover something called functional medicine. And functional medicine is really a way of connecting dots between what's happening in your body and understanding the biochemistry behind it, and then using food and lifestyle to change those pathways. My team includes Bonnie, who is a functional medicine certified coach, and she manages a team of coaches who help work with our clients. And together we offer a variety of solutions to people who want to figure out what's going on in the body. That's really what we do. It's a bit like detective work. It's like fixing a jigsaw puzzle where you're trying to understand which pieces are working, which pieces need to shift in order for the body to figure out its own natural healing ability. This is the process that I use, and there's a reason why I've got all of this included, even though today we're going to talk about the gut. And the reason is this: the gut is linked to so many parts of the body, and really in the body, you cannot look at any part in isolation. So while we believe that all disease and all health begins and ends in the gut, we also know that your hormonal system, your nervous system, how you sleep, how you respond to stress, what's going on with blood sugar and energy, all impacts the gut, and vice versa. This is a bilateral communication. And similarly, everything that happens in the gut goes down into your detoxification system. And think of this like the garbage disposal system. If you have a lot of drama in the gut, that's going to have an impact here. If you're not cleaning the garbage well, that's going to have an impact back into the gut. And I think it's really important to hold these three pieces in your mind when we think about health, because somebody could come in with purely a gut-based symptom, like, I have IBS and I don't know what to do. Is it a food? And the answer is yes, it's likely to be a food. It's also likely to need an analysis of your microbiome. And we have to look at stress and your hormonal system, and we have to look at how you detoxify. And I think that's where the nutrition clinic really, I feel very proud of the way we are able to take these pieces of information and turn them into a systematic process that people can then take into bite-sized portions and make changes with, because this is a lot to manage. And if you can't turn it into steps, then it just leaves you feeling overwhelmed. So the methodology we use, at the core, we always think about hormones. And I'd like to say that hormones are not just male and female hormones, but insulin or blood sugar is hormone, sleep and stress is hormone, thyroid is hormone. Hormones are your messengers. They affect every part of your body. And all of these pieces affect your hormones and vice versa. But let's talk a little bit about gut symptoms, because I know that's what's probably attracted a lot of you to come today, and I'd like to be able to address that and give you some tips and tools to work with. These are some of the common symptoms that people have that they associate with gut health. Very obviously, if there is bloating, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, that would all feel obviously like a gut issue. But even things like anxiety, eczema, candida, which is an overgrowth of an organism in the gut, can show up in some interesting ways. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about anxiety. There's a lot of conversation around mental health, and I don't think we can really address anxiety without looking at something like gut health, because we know that your microbiome has an impact on anxiety. We know that the status of your gut health has an impact on mood. And we also know that what you eat has an impact on mood and anxiety. Similarly, if you're dealing with anything to do with skin, so think of eczema, psoriasis, acne, all of that is linked to gut health. In functional medicine and natural medicine, there is this belief that your skin is an outer reflection of your gut. Your gut is like your inner skin, and this is your outer skin. And if you have something going on in the outer skin, you need to look at that inner skin first. We get great results when we work with clients who have eczema. People with eczema tend to have fairly involved gut issues. We tend to see a lot of food sensitivities. We tend to see a lot of organisms that are off balance. But once you know what the problem is, you can start making changes. And the great thing with skin issues is you see the progress on your skin immediately. Even blood sugar issues. Many people think of blood sugar. Well, what does that have to do with the gut? Now, the combination of flora that you have in your gut has an impact on how your body responds to sugar and insulin. So the one message I'd like everybody to leave with is that the body is highly, highly interconnected. What you're feeling today has taken time for you to reach there. If you have a medical diagnosis, you can assume it's been a 5 to 10 year journey for you to get there. And the way we halt that progress and start reversing it is first by understanding all these pieces and then laying them together so that you can, stop giving your body things that it doesn't like and just clean it out so that it's able to heal itself. When I work with clients who come to see me at the nutrition clinic, this is what the process looks like. I always start with a very thorough intake and review, a medical review, as well as a review of their food and lifestyle. We then have some fantastic lab tests that we have access to. We always start with food. So we start with, let's look at your diet and let's just get it clean. That's always the first step. We then start addressing these areas, and all of these areas, the work we do rests on what we find in the test. So if we find, for example, that a person's stress hormones are affected, we then really put attention there. If we find that it's really about gut repair, we put attention there. In reality, most people have to deal with all these pieces. It's just a question of where does our attention really focus on. Liver detoxification is important. And then we look at metabolism, hormone balance, and long-term resilience. The one message I'd like to leave people is a healthy metabolism, a healthy hormonal balance sits on top of this. To me, these pieces are the foundation work: food, sleep, gut detox. This is the foundation on which your health rests. When you start by saying, I want a diet that'll balance my hormones, it doesn't quite work like that unless you've looked at all of this first. So let's talk a little bit about the gut microbiome. The microbiome is this incredible population of organisms that are in the intestines. They are 20 to 30 trillion organisms, and we have more DNA from these microbes than we have human DNA by a factor of 10. So there is more DNA that is non-human in our body. I mean, I'd just like everybody to take that in for a moment. It's actually quite interesting when you think about so much of the coding in the body is non-human to begin with. Now, this population is there from birth. An interesting side note to that is children who are born via C-section have a lower level of microbes at birth, and that's called the primary inoculation. And so those children, as they grow up, need to be more aware of just protecting that microbiome that they have. And I'll talk a little bit about what, sorry, I'm just going to go a little bit ahead. What are some of the things that can affect the microbiome? So obviously food, sugar, gluten, processed food sensitivities, and I'll come back to this in a little bit. Foods that are difficult to digest. There is a tendency of using too many chemicals. Over-sanitizing actually starts affecting the microbiome on the skin. Stress, sleep, antibiotic overuse, and antibiotics in food. Now, all of these can come in and start depleting this microbiome. And if you don't work on that population, if you don't work to repopulate the gut, and repopulation of the gut is not just about taking a probiotic. Taking a probiotic is a good idea if you need it, but those probiotics have to make a home. It's really about making a home over here. And that's really involves a whole bunch of things, including sleep, stress, food. So people who just pop a probiotic and say, you know what, I'm fine. It may be okay, it may not be okay. It's not as simple as that. We run a test, it's a urine-based test called the organic acid test. And one of the things we're able to measure in that, so in this person's results, this is the reading for their probiotics, and we ideally want this to be higher. So this person has, moderate levels of probiotics, not high. But what's really interesting in this test is that this person has a massive overgrowth of yeast. So with these organisms, they're not all healthy. You have a population of organisms that are beneficial, and you have some that are called opportunistic, which means they just hang around, and if there's space, they multiply. And then you have organisms that are pathogenic, which means they cause problems. Now, I see a lot of people come in with yeast overgrowth, and that can show up as brain fog, bloating, skin issues. Those are the most common ones, but even sugar cravings can be caused by this. People who have itchy eyes, itchy ears, absolutely. And if you notice that when you travel to a dry climate, your symptoms seem a bit better, that's often a signal that it might be a yeast issue. Skin-related issues, even white patches, itchy skin, can be a yeast overgrowth. So this test is fascinating because we can actually get this information and then go in and start reducing this yeast impact and increasing the beneficial bacteria. So you're not working blind, you're figuring out what's really going on in the body. Many of you might have heard this term leaky gut. Leaky gut, the medical word for it is intestinal permeability. And leaky gut is a core problem that a lot of people have. And almost all the symptoms that I've described around the gut could have a leaky gut process at play. Now, if you look at the digestive tract and you were to kind of look at it as a cross section, this is what the inside would look like. It's a single cell layer. So this is your blood, and this would be where the food comes in. Food comes in when you eat. Actually, digestion begins in the mouth. So it all starts with how you chew. So the one tip I would have everybody take away is, if you're not chewing well, start with that. It is the simplest, but perhaps one of the most powerful things you can do around helping your gut health. So first you start chewing, and that starts breaking down food. Then you take that food in and it lands in the stomach, which is, think of it like a pot of acid, and the acid sterilizes the food, starts breaking it down even more, and then it goes all the way down. At every step, the whole idea is that food is broken down into the smallest particles possible, and that is done through, obviously, through chewing, through acid, but also through enzymes. And the food is also just pushed all the way down so that the body has some time to absorb nutrients. And the absorption, all of that happens around here. Now, if you have a healthy gut, what happens is, by the time food reaches the small and the large intestines, it's already quite broken up, and it starts getting absorbed, going into the blood, and then it goes and gets used for energy and other uses. But if anything damages this lining, and it's a single cell lining, so it's really vulnerable. So you think about somebody who's consuming a lot of processed food, or a lot of sugar, or a lot of antibiotics, or a lot of painkillers even, all of that can start damaging this gut lining, and it can start looking like this. And what happens then is you create lots of holes in the system, and that's where the word leaky comes from. You create a lot of holes in the system, and that encourages the growth of the wrong organisms. What also happens is food goes through that's not fully digested. The body starts getting alarmed that there is food, there are these particles coming in that don't seem familiar, and so it sends its army to the site, and that's a food sensitivity. It's the immune system reaction to a food because it's not been digested well, and it's landed in a surface that is inflamed. If anybody comes to me and they have more than 2 or 3 food sensitivities, and they have an issue with the microbiome, I consider them as a candidate for a leaky gut protocol, which looks at firstly making sure they're digesting, making sure they're not consuming the foods that are problematic for them, and then using certain nutrients to repair these holes. So just really bringing it back to this state. I had gone through this a few minutes ago. I'd like to highlight a couple of things here. We all know sugar is really bad for health. What many people don't know is it can damage the digestive lining directly. Gluten is one of the most common food sensitivities. So again, a tip for you to take away: if you haven't done a food sensitivity test, you're curious to know if you have a food sensitivity, go for 3 weeks without gluten and see how you feel. It's just a simple test that you can do for yourself and see if it makes any impact on your symptoms. Obviously, processed food comes here as well, as similar to sugar. All these chemicals, all these food colorings that unfortunately are being targeted at our children for marketing are really, really bad for the gut as well as other parts of the body. Food sensitivities, gluten is one of the most common food sensitivities, but number 2 would be dairy and number 3 would be eggs. These are all food sensitivities that can hurt the gut in the same way that gluten can hurt the gut. Some people might be surprised to see salads here. I'm a big fan of salads. I love them. But if you cannot digest well, eating a lot of raw food can be hard to digest. So once digestion is strong, salads are great. Raw food is good. But while you're fixing your digestive system, salads can be really tough to handle. I've talked about sanitization and antibiotics, which kind of comes in the same category of things that disrupt the microbiome. And stress and sleep, just have a huge impact on the entire body, including the microbiome, including inflammation, which is something we want to minimize. This is what a food sensitivity test looks like. It's a blood-based test where we look at what a person may react to. And you can see this person has cow's milk over here, has eggs over here, but they have some things that you wouldn't be able to guess. I would not be able to guess chestnut. I would not be able to guess pineapple, vanilla. So it really is useful to get that data so you know really what you're dealing with. A word about hormones. We've been running a series on hormones through the work I do. And so for the people here who are interested in that, the gut has an impact on the gut has an impact on hormones. And this is how it works. We produce our hormones, women produce our hormones in the ovaries. It enters the body. Once it does its job, it goes for cleaning to the liver, and it should just go out of the gut, and the body should just get rid of that estrogen. A little bit may come back, but most of it exits. If you don't have a healthy microbiome, the same process goes through, but there is the production of an enzyme here that then brings most of the estrogen back in, and in some ways it kind of retoxifies the body because that estrogen doesn't need to be there. And this can be linked to fibroids, cysts, any kind of growths that are hormonal may be linked to this whole space called estrogen dominance. And if anybody's interested in estrogen dominance, please just put your name down. We did 2 weeks ago, we did a workshop on that, an open office on that, and I'll be happy to send you the recording of that. All right, so now I'd like to hand over the mic to Sunita. I'm just going to stop my share so that Sunita can speak. And Sunita, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and the stage is yours completely.
Yep. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Sunita. I've been working with the nutrition clinic for quite some time, maybe about 2 years or so. And I'm very thankful that I found the nutrition clinic because I was in a very, very bad state about 2 years or so ago. So maybe just to give you a snapshot of what had happened and how I am today. So I gave birth in 2016 and I was breastfeeding my daughter for about a good 3 years. And when I started weaning off and stopped my breastfeeding completely, I started getting back all my previous stomach symptoms, especially acid reflux. So my go-to was omeprazole. So I started popping omeprazoles. I started getting more and more supply of it. And eventually in 2020, it was just the straw that broke the camel back. I started waking up every morning, vomiting, and I got admitted in hospital, and doctor ran all possible tests that they could run. And eventually they diagnosed me with SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I was given antibiotics, I was given a lot of medicines. And for about 2 to 3 months, I was literally just in bed. I couldn't go to work, I couldn't do anything. And after a while, I realized that actually the medicines was counterproductive. I just couldn't get any better. And then what I did was I actually started plotting a graph to see what is actually causing me and what happens at different times of the day. And then, like usually medicines have half-lives, like after a few hours, the medicines will usually start to taper off in their efficacy. And then I realized that when the medicines timing goes off, the efficacy reduces, I start feeling better. then it suddenly clicked that perhaps it was the medicines that was causing me a problem. So what I did was I told myself, enough is enough. I will stop the medicines. And then I had a family member that was actually seeing puja at that point in time, and I decided perhaps maybe I should try another route. Instead of Western medicine, let's try the nutritionist through the nutrition clinic. And that's when we ran our tests. Like Puja was sharing, there are many various tests that we ran, and eventually we found out that I had food sensitivities and also a little bit of candida. And the most interesting thing that I never expected of me having is high cortisol. So what happened was, with the food sensitivity, I was shocked that I was sensitive to a lot of things. It was gluten, dairy, egg, soy, vanilla, pineapple. Who would know vanilla, pineapple? Almonds, and a few other things. And then what happened was, I was very resolute in trying to make sure that I had no more pain. So what I did was I cut every food sensitivity out of my diet, and I started noticing changes. I no longer had that pain in the stomach that I used to have. I no longer wake up in the morning feeling that I needed to vomit. And then slowly Puja guided me through, and we started supplements. So that's where things got a little bit better. But at this point in time, I just wanted to share that, like what Puja mentioned in her earlier slides, right? It's actually fixing a puzzle and trying to fit all the pieces together. So for me, what actually worked quite well was actually looking at a few things. I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different things that I put together, which was food. So I looked out at what could be triggers. So things that are not in the food sensitivities, right, but naturally had high tendencies of causing more gas, had high tendencies of having higher sugar levels that could relate to more candida. I also tried to reduce them and cut them out. And then I tried to make sure that I did things like, for example, Puja recommended bone broth. So ever since I started bone broth, I have not stopped bone broth. So I have bone broth like maybe 5, 6 times a week. It's always there in one of my meal. And I thought that bone broth was very, very important to help build the building blocks in our gut. The other thing that I paid close attention to was the supplements. So through the test, we found out that I had deficiency in all the possible vitamins that you can have deficiency in. So I was deficient in vitamin C, deficient in vitamin D, and deficient in vitamin B. Because I had lost like close to 10 kilos in 3 months, 10 kilos in 3 months. And then we started off different supplements. So another thing that I probably want to share is, like sometimes supplements will have that recommended amount that you need to take. So for me, I think my body is slightly different, and everyone's body is actually different. So it's very important to listen to your body. So sometimes you may wonder that, okay, it says take 2 pumps of your vitamin B. So for me, when I started off with 2 pumps, I felt that it probably was a little bit too much for me. So if you could ask Puja, I always tell Puja, can I start small first? So I always started small and I started increasing from there. So it gave time to my body to actually adjust the supplements, and it's not like a shock to the body, especially for people with gut issues, right? It's very, very sensitive. Introducing any small supplement could actually affect the microbiome, and then you go back in the cycle again. So what's important is start slow and look at what works for you. So certain supplements work perfectly well for me. Certain supplements don't. For example, Puja was sharing just now, probiotics. Probiotics is not something that works well for me. But I do know that I need to build up my microbiome. So what I look at is I go and look at foods that give me probiotics. For example, asparagus, kimchi. Since I'm gluten-free, I need to find gluten-free kimchi. So those are the things that I introduced in my journey. The other important thing is actually sleep. So it's very important to actually note our sleep cycle. And actually, when you feel sleepy, that's the time you should get to bed. Turn off all lights. Because once you miss that wave, right, it takes very long for the wave to come again. So I realized that in piecing the puzzle together, sleep was very important. So I inculcated this habit where no phones, no TV for about half an hour to 40 minutes before bedtime, because that's when the melatonin in our bodies will increase and you get to fall asleep quickly. So sleep was another thing that actually helped with my gut. The other thing which Bonnie helped me with was actually stress and mindset. So when you are unwell, when you have gut issues, I'm a very firm believer that your stomach is actually your second brain. The moment you have a stomach ache, right, your main brain will never ever work, because that's thousands of neurons and pathways actually go through from our stomachs to our brain. So I also noted that stress was a trigger for me. So that's when I worked together with Bonnie and also looking internally, what were the stress triggers that I have. So I cut out those stress triggers, but some stress triggers you can't, because you live in a world where you are interdependent with everyone else. You can't say that I'll just shove this person away or shove this problem away. It doesn't work that way. So we need to look at how, so it was a mindset shift that I have to look at. So I practice always being in the present, not worrying about things that are beyond our control. Some people might wonder, what does a gut issue got to do with our stress? But actually it does a lot of wonder. So always trying to remain in the present. I know sometimes people might wonder that we have so much of pain in our gut. How do we always remain in the present? So that's where the willpower will need to come in, where you will just need to trust the process and always trust your body. And the other thing that I was very adamant or determined to do was actually to bring down my cortisol level. So cortisol level is also in relation to the serotonin that we have in our body. So there are supplements that can help us, but because of how highly sensitive my body is, I opted the more natural approach, which is to go for walks, which is to go for walks, go to the parks, spend time reading, and always staying in the present, do small things for ourselves. I also had a colleague that once asked me this question, which I thought was very useful. She asked me, what do you do for yourself? So during your free time? So I was like, oh, what do I do for myself? Oh, I spend time with my husband. I spend time with my family. I bring my daughter out. We go to the libraries. We have a nice meal together. Then she asked me this question again. So what do you do and spend time for yourself? So I repeated the same thing again, thinking that maybe she misunderstood what I said. And then she asked me again. And then at that point in time, I got a bit agitated. I'm like, what do you mean? What do I do for myself? And then she was like, no, all your answers revolved around others, having your husband around there, having your family members around there, having your daughter around you. So it's also very important to remember that when you need to have time out for yourself, that means all by yourself. Because in order to be able to fill up the cup and the needs of others, your cup needs to be full first. If you're always giving and not giving yourself enough, you won't be able to get through all these gut issues. So throughout the entire process, right, like Pooja was sharing the 9 different steps, I am very happy that I've reached to a place where I'm resilient enough, and I'm currently pregnant and in my late 3rd trimester. So even through my pregnancy, I was able to keep my gut in order with all the morning sickness and I have, and I still kept to keeping away my food sensitivities. You know, when pregnancy comes, you have so much of cravings. Oh my God, Pooja knows how much I crave for cakes until today, even though the craving supersedes what my sensitivities are, right? I will never dare to put my fork into a normal regular cake, because it's the journey that you've gone through. Sometimes you need to have that willpower to just put it aside. And I also ran the test, a food sensitivity test, a couple of months ago, or maybe about a year ago. And I realized that I'm no longer allergic to almonds. I'm no longer allergic to soy and vanilla and pineapple. So it does help by giving yourself some space and time to improve your leaky gut. I'm very sure I had leaky gut, and then to actually tighten the pockets together. And I don't think it's something that once you have already reached a point of resilience, right, going back to the original state before having all this, right, is even possible at that point in time. You may need to actually just stick onto it and slowly introduce things along the way. So with that, I think I conclude my sharing, and I just wanted to thank Pooja and Bonnie for helping me through this process, because I was really, really lost, because even my doctor was like, Sunita, I think you probably can try to find alternative medicine, maybe try homeopathy, try alternative medicines. But I think it was just trusting your body and knowing where you are at that point in time.
Thank you so much, Sunita. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for anybody in this call, there'll be a chance for you to ask Sunita questions, because I think just her sharing her journey is incredibly powerful. I know one of the things I experienced while working with you, Sunita, is just your openness and your ability to take these threads and run with them and do your own research. And each one of these has become an area of research that you have actually spent some time doing, which is incredible. I see what we do as a trigger, but and one of the reasons we're doing these calls is because even with the clients I see once a month, I can't communicate everything there is to communicate. There is so much information out there. And I think when a client just takes that and makes it their own personal discovery, it's super powerful. And congratulations on baby number 2. I'm going to just share my screen one more time with some questions that came through to us. And if you have more questions, please put them in the chat, and both Sunita and I can answer them. So if you give me a minute, I'll just do that. Somebody asked a question about probiotics. Do you need to take probiotics every day, and what kind? So there's certain supplements that you cycle in and out. There's some supplements that you can take long-term. Probiotics are one of those supplements that you can take long-term till your gut heals to a certain point, and then you can cycle them in and out. When it comes to probiotics, ultimately probiotics are nothing but living organisms. So you need to make sure that you have a really good brand. I think investing in a good brand matters. When we bring in probiotics, if something requires, unless it's designed as shelf stable for our climate, and we do actually look at the climate that the manufacturer is referring to, we bring anything that we're not convinced about refrigerated, which means they come in refrigerated, they're stored refrigerated, and we'll ask clients to refrigerate it. So it's really important to know that the pill you're taking or the capsule you're taking has live organisms in them. One of the things a lot of the clients who take up, probiotics say is that they actually feel some activity. So the first couple of days can even feel a little bit like, what's going on? Why am I bloated? It's just these organisms making a home for themselves. Ultimately, your body needs to then take those organisms and multiply them and expand that population. So I don't necessarily believe that people need to be dependent on probiotics. For some of my clients, I cycle them in 2 or 3 times a year and then allow the body to take a break from it to see how that goes. This is somebody who's been diagnosed with RA, an autoimmune condition. There is a lot of information on like an autoimmune protocol, which definitely will include making sure that you don't have sugar, dairy, white rice. So look, the AIP, the autoimmune protocol, can be any of these and alternatives. So there's some people who follow more of a paleo style diet where they keep the meat in but drop grains. There are some people who believe that being on a more vegan diet would be a better idea. As I've mentioned before, I am very neutral when it comes to which diet you follow. It has to be the right one for your body. The label doesn't matter to me. In general, though, I have to say that people who have autoimmune conditions do better by cutting out definitely sugar, definitely all food sensitivities that they have. I tend to take out grains, I tend to take out beans and lentils, and I tend to take out nightshades. Now, not everybody needs to avoid everything at the same time. We do it in a step-by-step manner. And the starting point for me is we first clean up the diet, get rid of processed food. And then once we know their food sensitivities, that's the next thing to go out. And then we take it up that ladder based on what they need. It's possible that you don't have any food sensitivities, but you still would benefit from cutting out grains, for example, or beans, for example, definitely sugar and processed food. And some people don't have any food sensitivities to nightshade vegetables. These are vegetables like tomatoes, eggplant, potatoes, that can trigger autoimmune conditions, particularly rheumatoid arthritis. And so some people need to take them out, even if they don't have a food sensitivity to them. Is it normal to go to the toilet every 3 days? No, it's not. Ideally, you should go to the toilet every day, once or twice a day. So, when I have these consultations with clients and I say, are you constipated? And many people say, no, I'm not. And I have learned that you need to ask the question, because for some people, it just feels normal if that's the way things have always been, but it isn't normal. You need to clean the body every day. It is one of the biggest channels of detoxification. So daily going to the toilet is absolutely important. So this is somebody who says that they get bloated in the afternoon at a specific time when they feel cold, when they feel hungry, when they eat certain cold foods. They're taking some medication. So what is I guess one part of it is why this time? What does the cold have to do with it? What does being hungry have to do with it? And does that person need regular hot meals? A couple of things that stand out here. Whenever somebody says something happens at a certain time, we have to look at habits around that, but also look at how your body is responding to that time. So it could be as simple as the person needs to eat a meal, their body is hungry. And if you're hungry, if you're not able to tolerate hunger, either due to just feeling really tired and irritable and cranky, or having a gastric issue, then the first thing is don't do intermittent fasting till that's sorted out, because that intermittent fasting will be a trigger. If a person is hungry and they're not able to handle that because their gut lining is not healthy, those digestive enzymes, those juices are irritating, then that, you really need to look at the timing of your food. In general, cold food like salads are not easiest on the digestive system. So you really want to focus on warm foods. You want to focus on not skipping meals. And you want to look at, is there a stressor around this time? And one of the tests we run is an adrenal test, which is a saliva-based test that measures cortisol 4 times in a day. So you get an idea, what's my body feeling at these different times of the day? And it's possible that something is going on at that time that may be causing an upset. It could be that the person has been to the gym. There could be so many elements. You could go to the gym and that could be too stressful for you, and that could be causing a problem. So really interesting question, because I don't have a sort of set answer, but a few things that I will say is, if hunger is a trigger, then please eat before. If cold foods are a trigger, even if you didn't tell me they were, I would say if you're dealing with a digestive issue, please have warm food, cooked food rather than cold food. Biscuits, the first thing I think of biscuits is sugar and gluten. So you might want to try cutting out gluten for 3 weeks and see how you do. Hope that helps. So I do see a lot of people who come in and they say, I've been on a trip, or I suddenly feel like my digestion has changed overnight. And this question that came in reminded me of a few people I've worked with who've experienced that. And it almost feels like, hang on, what happened? 2 days ago, I could eat whatever, and today I cannot. So the first thing I'd like to say is, it may feel like it's happened overnight, but in all likelihood, it's been building up for a time. The only situation where something can change overnight in digestion would be if you pick up a bug. And most people know if they've picked up a bug, but assuming that's not the case, what's happened, there's probably been a good period of time, could even be years, where the body has been facing issues. And we must remember that the body is not trying to fight us, that it's always trying to help us and adapt to what we're throwing at it. So let's say this person theoretically has an issue with a gut microbiome, has an issue with food sensitivities, is not sleeping well, is highly stressed. The body has actually been living with that for months, maybe years, and it's compensated to the point where it just cannot take it anymore. And it's often that one thing that's a trigger. It could be a trip. It could be a period of stress. It could be a few days of not having enough sleep. So what we would do is look at what's really happened, what's really happening to the digestive system, and then what may have happened along the way to have created this problem. So the one thing I'll say is it hasn't happened overnight. It's taken some time to get there. Before I wrap up and have some time for questions, I'd just like to say that we are giving away this biofermented papaya leaf extract for all of you who'd like to just post about this webinar on your social media and tag TNC, as well as comment on our last post. It's a great drink. It's a food-based probiotic, so it's a really nice way of getting your probiotics. You just take a shot like that. It's tasty, and it's a great product because it's taken papaya leaves and fermented them. So it's a food. It's using food in order to get your probiotics, very similar to kimchi or other fermented foods. And as always, here is a way to reach out to us. If you have more questions and you want to book a 10-minute inquiry call, just head to our website and you can use this QR code, book a 10-minute call, and somebody will reach out to you and have a conversation with you. And this is a great opportunity for people who have specific questions and want to know more about how we might be able to help them. Next week, we are doing our festive Wednesday session. It's the final webinar for the year where we talk about what do you do about hangovers. It is the festive season. I think a lot of people are really excited to go out, travel, spend time with family. We are realistic about what that means. What can you do to support your liver, to protect your gut, to hydrate your body, to process alcohol and some of the food that goes with alcohol during this festive season? So it's going to be a fun session, a great chance for you to ask your questions. We will share with you what are the better drinks, what to take before, what to take after, and some of the things to consider when you're consuming alcohol. With that, I'm going to stop the share of the screen so that we can look at these questions that have come through. All right, let me just.
If you like, I can jump in and share one.
Yes, please. Yes.
Wondering if there's a reason why Sunita's symptoms showed up after she stopped breastfeeding. After I stopped breastfeeding, my symptoms showed up too.
Sunita, would you like to share a little bit about that? Because I know you did some research on this, and we've had some conversations about it.
Yeah. So I was also very, very curious why the pain, the symptoms all showed up after I stopped breastfeeding. So I did some research in this space, and I found out that during breastfeeding, we actually release a hormone called oxytocin. So this is actually a hormone that is required for us to have healthy lactation. However, it's also the same hormone that it's called the happy hormone. It's actually the hormone that released when we are loved by our loved ones. So this hormone actually masks pain, and therefore the pain and symptoms might have already been there, but each time you latch, each time you pump, you actually release that same amount, that large amount of oxytocin. So the hormones might have masked the pain away, and when we stop breastfeeding, right, naturally the levels of this hormone will drop, thus making all those symptoms actually be more apparent and the pain more apparent. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
I've got another question in. If a food item causes more gas but not painful bloating, especially an item that causes many people more gas, example lentils, is it okay to continue eating it, or is that an intolerance?
That's a great question. It could be an intolerance, but we do know that beans and lentils are generally difficult to digest. So it's possible it's an intolerance, but even if it's not an intolerance, it's a difficult to digest food. So you definitely want to do things like soak it, if possible, sprout it, and also look at maybe taking a digestive enzyme. So those are all kind of short-term, immediate things you can do. The other thing to look at is, well, why am I not able to digest this food? What is causing a problem? In most cases, it is a microbiome issue. There could be an overgrowth of certain organisms or a lack of certain organisms that are stopping you from digesting these foods. Taking a digestive enzyme is fine, but I always ask the question, why does this person need digestive enzymes? And one of the things that interferes with the production of digestive enzymes is stress. So we would look at, you could just try a few things at home, or reduce taking lentils if you're able to eat a variety of proteins. But if you'd like to explore further, then these are some of the things that we would be looking at.
Another question for you.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Do you want me to read it out for you?
Sure, I can take it. Is it normal to pee every hour, even though there's not a lot of water intake? Some people just are, I've actually had a conversation about this recently with somebody. It is possible that you're not holding onto the water that you're consuming, because you take water in and then it shouldn't just flush out. Some of it should be held into the body, and that's what's called hydration. Now, one of the things that can affect that is the status of minerals. If you don't have enough electrolytes and minerals, that can make you go to the toilet more often. And the second is stress also affects that. It's an interesting way of looking at it. When your body is stressed, your body is its reaction is very similar to a caveman's thinking, right? The circuitry is still very similar. So when the body is stressed, it's actually thinking, I need to fight, flight, I need to move. So I'm just going to get rid of anything I can get rid of. So you normally end up going to the toilet under stressful situations because the body's just actually getting ready for fight or flight. So those are some of the things to look at. Somebody's asked about betaine HCl. That is a great supplement to its hydrochloric acid. It's one of the things. So the question is, does it help in an autoimmune condition? It's one of the things that can be involved in helping the gut, but I wouldn't say it's a magic pill for autoimmunity. And I'll also say there's no magic pill for autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is a complex situation where the body is confused about what is self and what is foreign. And so just taking one supplement is not going to sort that out. Nothing wrong with taking it, but I don't think it's a solution for autoimmunity. Intermittent fasting or keto. So is it normal for people who are intermittent fasting or on the keto diet to not poop every day? What is the recommended frequency? Definitely once a day, maybe even twice a day. It's possible that on the keto diet, you're not consuming enough fiber. On the keto diet, also your microbiome changes because suddenly it's getting very different food. With intermittent fasting as well, you have to look at, are you consuming enough fiber, because you're compressing all your meals into a shorter window. So that would be the first thing I'd look at is fiber. The second thing I'd look at is water. And the third thing I'd look at is movement, because exercise also helps with a process called peristalsis, which helps you go to the toilet. I see a few people want the estrogen dominance information. We'll definitely send that across. Are there any other questions? And if anybody wishes to just switch on their video and their mic and ask questions, please feel free to do that as well.
Another question's come through, Pooja. How do we know whether we don't have enough electrolytes or minerals, and what minerals in particular?
That's a great question. So when we run the adrenal panel, if somebody is in a burnout type of state, we assume they have a deficiency of minerals and electrolytes. It's just the most important thing. You need to just get your body spark plug going. A way of testing this out for you, what might be the easiest thing for you to do, is to have some water with a pinch of pink salt or sea salt. Try and take that in the morning. You can put a bit of lemon juice in it if you like, and see if that helps you. If that helps you, then you needed that sodium intake in sodium chloride, which comes from salt. You needed that extra sodium. Now, obviously, people are concerned about too much sodium consumption, which is a very fair concern. But it's also possible that if you don't have enough sodium in the body, your body releases water. So simple tip is try taking a bit of extra salt, make it good quality salt. So either pink salt or sea salt, a small pinch in the morning, and see if that sorts out the issue. Somebody's asking for reasons for high ESR in a blood test. ESR is one of the markers for inflammation. There could be many reasons for ESR being high. It could be an infection. It could be an autoimmune condition, would also have high ESR. We typically consider infection and autoimmunity as the starting point to look at. And what you would, and this is from somebody called Deepa, what you would look at is speaking to your doctor and just running a panel to be sure that there isn't a stealth infection there. So an infection that's not high enough to create major symptoms, but it's getting the body fighting and the immune system going. So you want to run that, and you want to run that along with an autoimmune panel to see if something is showing up there. Kelvin is asking salt in food versus water. Yes, you can have it in food. I like to recommend this in the morning because people who tend to have low electrolytes also feel a bit tired in the morning. And if they take that, that might help them. But yes, you can absolutely add the salt into food. If somebody's coming back to the ESR question, are there tests to localize areas of inflammation? There would be, but you'd have to start with a broad spectrum panel through, and that's very much a medical question. So I'm just going to stick to the information I know around that. The tests would need to be medical tests. What I can tell you from the knowledge I have is that when there is ESR, if there is an infection, it may show up in blood rather than other scans, but really it's a good idea to speak to a doctor for that. Somebody's asking what are leg cramps in early morning a possible sign of. It could be low magnesium, could be low potassium. Those are the typical things that can cause leg cramps at night or in the morning. Somebody's asking if you could be infected with H. pylori and be treated for it. Absolutely. So H. pylori is, and it's an infection of the gut. It's the most common infection of the gut, and it stands for Helicobacter pylori. It is one of the organisms that's considered to be the cause of ulceration in the gut. And H. pylori can be treated through, it can be tested very easily through a doctor. It can be treated through antibiotics. It can also be treated through natural herbs, but in all likelihood, you would need to first take antibiotics because it just takes too long to treat completely naturally. And because we know it causes ulcers, you don't want to take a chance of it lingering in the body longer than it should. So if somebody has H. pylori, I normally recommend see a doctor, get on the antibiotics, and then we keep the gut healthy by doing everything else that we can so that they are very strong. It's like a three-course cocktail of antibiotics. So you want to make sure the gut is protected after you've taken that course. Somebody's asking, is there any alcohol that is okay for the gut? I'll tell you the ones that are not okay. Definitely anything sweet. So beer, cider, sweet cocktails are not okay for the gut. If somebody has a yeast overgrowth, we definitely recommend a period of no alcohol. Some people are able to tolerate the clear spirits. And actually, Sunena, this is a great question you brought up. Next week, we're going to do a chart of the different alcohols and you know, if you had to choose, which one would you choose and why? So please definitely join that. If not, we'll send you the link for that. Somebody's asking, after an operation, what food or vitamins can I take to strengthen my muscles and body without having allergy or insensitivity? So when you think about what happens in a surgery, there are a few things that need to be considered. One is you're likely to have taken some antibiotics as part of a surgery. So we want to protect the gut. We want to get the probiotics in. You want to get enough protein in. Protein is your repair nutrient. In order to get protein in, you need to consume it in a form that's easy to digest and absorb. So you can eat it, but you can also take it through things like bone broth, which is what Sunita talked about, which is excellent for healing. You can take it through protein shakes and you can take it through food. You want to make sure you get enough sleep, because sleep is really when repair work happens. You want to manage stress levels and make sure you're getting really good quality sleep so that your body can repair. If the surgery was more involved and there were more medications given, you want to also strengthen liver detoxification to flush those out of the system. So it would be a multifactorial management, but these are some of the things that we would look at. All right, I think we have one more question. Do you ever come off multivites, or is it for life? There are nutrients such as magnesium that are hard to come from food. What nutrients must be absolutely supplemented? Kelvin, that's a fantastic question. So this is the way I see it. We're unfortunately not able to get all our nutrients from food, in part because we are not living near a farm where things are, you know, completely organic, fresh, immediate from soil to plate. And so that's one issue. The second is that we have more demands on the body than generations before us. You're right when it comes to something like magnesium. We know that 90% of the soil, 90% of the population does not have enough magnesium, and that's because there has been this depletion in the soil. We can share with you an image that I have. I don't have it on hand right now, but I shared it a couple of weeks ago, where we looked at iron. Maybe I can find it. Let me just see if I can find it. And that it's a great image. You just give me a minute. Yeah, got it here. Let me just share this. So I think this will answer your question. So this is a study done out of UCLA in the US, where they looked at iron content in spinach in 1953, and they looked at the same plot of land, and they looked at the iron content in spinach in 1997. And this is the amount of spinach you needed to get the same iron level as 1 cup. So this shows that there has been a depletion of nutrients over the years. So yes, in modern life, modern food, it's very hard for us to get all the nutrients we need from food. Having said that, I don't think it's necessary to take a supplement for everything. I think you have to know why you're supplementing. There's certain things like magnesium, like fish oil, sometimes for some people, even probiotics, B vitamins for many people, which I think need to be part of a foundational list of supplements that they take. But then there are other supplements that you take for short periods of time because you need them for a specific purpose. You need them in order to, you know, like digestive enzymes, you take them for a while you're fixing the gut. You wouldn't necessarily want to take a whole list of supplements forever. You want to be able to pick and choose. So I think the first thing to remember with supplements is, why are you taking it? What is the reason? Have you looked at whether or not there is really a deficiency? Are you even, and honestly, we're talking about gut today. If you don't digest well, you can have the best supplement, but are you really even breaking that down and absorbing it? So many of the supplements that we use are in capsules or liquids or powders, because that's much easier to absorb than a tablet. So I don't like tablets. I much prefer capsules. So the short answer is, you don't have to take everything for life, but there are probably some things that you would need to take long-term in order to get your nutritional needs met. Michelle has asked, you mentioned earlier that we should give a body a break once we've completed a cycle of prebiotics. How long should this break be? So we get people to first replenish the gut. So you first need to take it consistently, take probiotics consistently to know that you're fixing that underlying issue. And then I like to do 3 cycles a year. Typically, I just say, look, every quarter, take a cycle of probiotics. If you're traveling a lot, you might need to take them more often. If you take antibiotics, you need to go back onto probiotics. If you have a surgery or anything else like that, a stomach bug, you need to take them more often. So it could be 3 times a year or a little bit more than that, depending on the situation. Kelvin is asking if there's a replay from previous session. Yes, we can definitely send you that. And it's on the chat. All right. Any more I'll take one last question because I'm aware of the time. Great. Thank you. I think everybody's questions have been answered. We will be sending you this link and we'll be sending you the details for next week. Please do join and please share this information with your friends. And thank you very much for joining us. It's been wonderful. And thank you for all the questions. It's really great to have these questions from you because we understand what people are, what you're interested in. And a huge, huge thank to Sunita for her share, which I think was really, really special and very heartfelt and really wonderful to see how well she's doing now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.